episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash, and we're back with some more fantasy football, going over our sleepers and busts for running backs. We did this for receiver, and now we're doing it for running backs. I've got Matt and Theo laughing at me. I don't know what I said that was so funny.
No, he was laughing at me. It's okay.
No,
don't worry.
I understand, man. I understand. You know, normally I like to ask you guys how you're doing, but I'm going to still do that, but I'm going to feel bad about it, you know?
Well, I'm feeling bad if that makes you feel any better.
Yeah.
Theo recently switched his mic to the new upgraded mic because the USB port in your Shure microphone that we've had for a couple of years now, we've had the same one, kind of like fell apart, like it fell off.
Yeah.
And the day after he tells me that, it happens to mine. The episode after, I have the exact same problem with mine, except my port is now like lodged in there somehow. So, of course, this happens before I can have the chance to replace it. So I'm on a very bad Fifine microphone. So if my audio sounds poor, I apologize. I'm going to try to say as few P's as possible.
I think as far as like mediocre mics go, Fifine is probably as good as you can get.
It's like a 20. It's not bad for a $20 mic. It costs $20.
It's one of those mics you see on the TikTok shop, and you're.
I was looking through my big box of electronics, and I still have one of the that you only will know this, Blaine, but one of those little handheld like microphones that they had in TV. I have one for some reason, and when we were in high school, my TV.
Wait, can I see it? Can I see it?
No, it's a little bit too far away from me, and I'm not going to go run and get it, but I'll send you a picture.
All right, man.
So anyway, I'm upset about that, and now I have to get a new mic and blah, blah, blah. So
blah, blah, blah.
This might be a struggle episode for me. I'm also holding it, that's another Theo Ash move, and I'm not as big a fan of it as you are. I like my stand, but of course this doesn't fit. So
yeah,
I'm role playing as you today, man.
This is a very Theo Ash thing to.
You need to go on like do. a big long spiel. You don't really have big long spiels, Matt.
Sometimes I do, not as often as Theo, but I have the occasional long spiel. No,
occasional, but you're more known for. It's like you're more known for. Matt didn't say a whole lot this episode.
Sometimes you don't gotta say much, man. You know, sometimes you just gotta sit back. Hopefully, that's probably not everything needs podcasting. To be real with you, but this might be one of those episodes because I'm worried that the mic sounds bad, and I'm worried that I'm going to say the wrong thing.
No, it sounds fine. It sounds fine, but
Theo,
that is a very Theo Ash side plot to have your mic break, and now you have to hold it, and there's all sorts of problems. But I'm doing well. I feel like my mental health gets 100% better post Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
Memorial Day has got to be the most underrated holiday. Like, it's really just the same as the 4th of July, where it's like you get the day off. Usually the weather's good.
Mm-hmm.
And you just like hang out at a cabin or by the pool or at a park all day. And obviously Memorial Day was a while ago now, but it's like every day after Memorial Day is kind of the same thing. Like it's awesome. Summer is here.
You get the day this morning,
off. Yeah, exactly. So I just feel like summer is here. I was sitting by the pool. I was playing cribbage in the pool. I've been playing so much cribbage recently with Cammy.
What is cribbage?
We play cribbage every day.
I looked that up because you tweeted about that.
We play cribbage every day. It's a card game. It's very good. It is the best card game. Maybe poker is better if you can get a group of people together, but for just like you and one other person,
poker's like tough to put together, and then it's like you got to have money on it. It's like it's weird to.
Yeah, if you want just a casual game that takes about 20 minutes, it's hard to beat cribbage.
Fair enough.
I actually saw. First off, I agree with you 100% about your Memorial Day. Again, people who prefer winter, crazy. The big thing that I've been thinking about is how long it's staying light out is so big. For it to be 9 o'clock and light out, you forget how important that is, how good that is. I wish it was like this all the time. The weather's been really good recently, especially in Cincinnati. It's just been like 75. I honestly wish it'd be a little bit warmer, but I'm not going to complain about 75. But
So
yeah,
it's
I've noticed
90
a
here
lot
in
of.
Denver today.
Yeah, I would take that all
Beautiful.
day, dude.
Let's
Um,
go.
I forgot what else. Oh, yeah. And I saw you've been walking a lot in your videos. You're out and about, and I saw one of those little memes that's like the 20-year-old walker that I almost sent to you. But there's a few that like didn't really apply to you. It was kind of mean about it for some reason. So I was like, I'm not going to send that to him.
I am the walker. I feel like recording while you're walking is a good exercise for me because it's just more stream of consciousness stuff.
Right. I totally feel you on that. And I feel like it's just like when you get the spur of the moment, like you're really thinking about it right that second instead of I'm going to go home and record this. And then it's like a little bit more.
I do feel like
upright.
walking is good. And I also think walking at night, I might record more walking at night videos because I feel like that adds kind of an air of mystery to the videos. You know that you'll get a video on your For You page. It's like some old dude and he's like doing something crazy and all the comments will say like mythical For You page poll.
I
feel like when I'm
be a mythical For You page poll.
I mean, it's not because I have tons of followers, right? Like I have 260,000. So it's really not that mythical, but it has the feeling of that if you get me like walking in the woods at night or anywhere at night.
There's like, it's like there's
talking
the
about
chance
football.
that you could die is always what.
No, who was it who did the like not film reviews, but they do like the draft player reviews, but they'd be straight up running through
the woods.
forest.
That was C Mike's spin move. That was
Right.
Griff Sturgeon on Twitter. I don't think he really kept up
remember
with that, but that was a
think
great
he-
concept
yeah.
where he was like legitimately like there's like some animal like yelping off to the side and he's like, I gotta leave. Like if he's not going to continue
PJ
that
Hall or
series,
whoever.
I'll gladly take up
One
where
day
you left
Theo's
off
not
because
going
that's
to
a
show
great
up to
idea.
record the podcast, and we'll all know why.
Yeah,
The
it'll be on
forest
video.
got him. Yeah.
The forest got me. But
Theo, I saw a TikTok of yours where you talked about a topic that's pretty old, the Mario team.
yes, I made one mistake on that.
Which was?
I didn't put Mario at running back. I put Bullet Bill. But Mario has to be running back. The comments saying Mario needs to be on the field are correct because Mario's whole thing is avoiding the bad guys. Like we've seen it before,
true.
right? Like every
Because
game
he stomps on the Goombas. Yeah.
right. Like if my defense is made up of Koopas and Thwomps and stuff like that, like who better to evade those than Mario? I still want my flying quarterback. I still want my big wide receivers so I can throw down into the big target. But being able to hand the ball off to Mario, like he's got the unlimited stamina. He's literally built to make all of these guys miss.
Yeah.
So Mario needs to be running back.
I do think you made one other mistake, which is that players with projectile weapons should not be allowed to use them.
I feel
That
like
should be illegal. If Mario gets a fire flower, he should not be able to shoot fireballs.
well, he doesn't get a fire flower. I'm talking like I don't know. I don't think they should be able to get the power ups, but like Magic Koopa always has magic.
But like she shouldn't be able to use her wand.
I don't know. I think that makes the football aspect of it more fun to think about because then how would magic affect football? To me, is a more interesting thought experiment than just trying to find the characters that look the most like a defensive end. Like if I'm talking about like Star Wars, like let's think about that. How does the Force affect the football game?
That's
like
different.
I'd make the football go to the end zone with the force or something.
I think having a wand is like it's like a tool, right? It's like something that you brought with you. As opposed to
players got hand warmers, don't they?
If you can use magic without using a wand, sure. But if you
is Mario allowed to stomp on a Goomba if it's like a defensive tackle? Because you're not allowed to kill the opponent.
I think
we would definitely need to look very closely at the rules of football to see what can carry over. And
Magic Koopa gets a wand in Mario Baseball and uses it to catch the balls.
Do they?
They do.
Okay.
In Super Sluggers.
Then maybe,
with what you're saying. I mean, there could be a very different version of Mario Football where like you can't get multiple of the same character and like wands are illegal, and then I'd have to build an actual football team. But I think
I do agree with you on the flying aspect of
at
things.
face value, if we just get the Mario characters who like get usually like their typical powers, I think that that's an interesting thought experiment. And in the original post, it kind of seemed like they did get their powers because like Bowser got his flying thing, like the thing that Bowser Jr.
Bowser Jr.
got the little doohickey that he rides around in. So it's like, why don't?
And that really is a doohickey. I mean, what the hell do you call it?
What the fuck is that? His bowl? I don't know, but
right, it's like a little bowl with like almost like a little boat propeller off the back of it, but that's not how that works.
But it makes him fly.
The air, right?
Yeah, but he got that in the original poster's tweet. So I figured if we're taking his reality, and if I was going to build a team to beat that team,
are you allowed to get multiple of the same player? Like, are you allowed to have multiple?
I don't think
like,
you get multiple
bones
Donkey Kongs, but I think if you want a team full of like Koopa Troopas, you should be able to have that. But there's only one Mario, and so that was my mentality going into it, where it's like I can't build a whole team of Rosalinas, but I can have the Rosalina at quarterback, and I can have the Mario
at quarterback. Was a really great choice. I give you.
Yeah, she's definitely who I want there. I really think like if I sub in Mario at running back, that team is perfect.
You could do a running back by committee type deal, and or is it just
Mario and Bullet Bill are my Najee and Jaylen Warren. But speaking of those two running backs, let's talk about our topic for today, which is running backs and their fantasy outlooks for next season. It's a little bit early to be talking about these things, but
it's a little bit early to be talking about just about anything right now.
Yeah.
So.
It's a very good point.
I feel
we're gonna
like
do it anyway, and you'll be ahead of the curve. And when you have that June 14th fantasy draft,
right, exactly. Guys, I have one question for you. Whose jersey am I wearing?
You got Nick Chubb on.
Why do you think that is?
Because you're gonna have them as your sleepers.
For the record, for people who did not listen to the last episode, it's 3 sleepers and 3 bust we're going to do in some sort of rotation.
Yes. We'll keep you on your toes a little bit. You're right. Nick Chubb is one of my sleepers.
I mean, he's pretty low.
He's running back 32 right now.
It's completely insane. That is not even like RB2 level. That is backup level. That is mid-tier backup level. At that point, we're getting into barely being in the top 100. He was a top 5 back in 2022. I know he got hurt last year, but what is stopping him from being a top 15 to a top 10 back again this year?
Probably his fucking knee, man.
Oh, brother.
Blaiden.
I'm sick. No, because here's what grinds my gears. Jonathan Brooks is a more acceptable running back to have on your team than Nick Chubb. We've got Ramondre Stevenson, Zamir White. What are we talking about, man?
Dude, Nick Chubb is like how old? 28?
Don't care.
And he messed up his knee like really bad.
He's done it before.
He really messed up his knee. I mean, I don't even know.
That's bad. That's not good. He's had multiple. It's okay, dude. He's had multiple knee injuries.
He's come back before. He can do it again.
And I kind of believe it, but as it stands right now, I think that's just in May. I think it's a total shot in the dark. I won't hate you for it. I mean, I totally get it. And at running back 32, I mean, I don't know. What is the average running back 32 looking like carry wise? Because I think more than any other position, we're just talking about not entirely, but largely how many touches are these guys going to see? Mm-hmm. And I think Chubb is still in line for a good amount.
RB 32 last year was Devin Singletary, and he got 216 carries for 898 yards, 4.2 yards per attempt.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if here's the worry as well. Chubb comes back, he's still pretty good, but now they're really trying to limit the number of carries that he has. And all of a sudden he only sees like 200, and I don't know. I think 32 sounds about right to me. I see the vision for it. I mean, Chubb is a different animal. I think we all had him as like our best running back in the NFL, or our top 3 running back in the NFL at the start of last year. And if he comes back and the Browns run it a lot and he, pulls off a really tough recovery, I wouldn't be totally shocked. And Blaiden, I'm not surprised that you're betting on that. Like, I get it.
I'm going to bet on it. I look at like Javonte Williams is ahead of him. That is totally insane. Zamir White last year was RB 56, and he is supposed to be ahead of Nick Chubb. Like, what are we
Josh
talking?
Jacobs left, and
I actually agree with that
RB1.
one. I would take Zamir White.
I guess that's fair, but like still.
I mean, I agree with you about Chubb. I do think that he's a little slept on just because I think that he's one of those special talents. I think that if anybody can come back from a major knee injury, it's him. Like he has been my best running back in the league for a long time now in terms of like pure rushing talent. And in 2022, he had his best fantasy season. It's not like he was on some like major downturn and then this happened. Like he was kind of at the peak of his powers. He had 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns in 2022. Also 239 receiving yards, which isn't a ton, but it's something, right? So I do think that he is such a force that he will come back pretty strong. So I do think that he's actually a valid sleeper. I would rather have Nick Chubb on my team than Javonte Williams or somebody like that.
Williams, I actually really dislike. He's not quite one of my busts, but he finished as like running back 30 last year, and he's RB like 25 in standard. And I just don't think he's that good, or that the Broncos like situation has improved, or that he's in line for a bunch more carries. Like, I don't know. I think there's other dudes I'd rather take around that area. He's one of the guys that I'm like not entirely against, but probably avoiding unless it's really good value. At least,
we're Estime fans over here.
That's true as well.
So I can't really be an Estime fan. And
they're kind of, they're not super similar, but like I feel like Estime can do a lot of the same stuff that Javonte does.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a big physical back. I don't want to talk too much about Javonte because I didn't plan on it, but I agree. Javonte Williams at 29, I would not be very interested in.
High.
You can look at anybody after him until like Ezekiel Elliott, and I'm probably taking them over Javonte.
I think where I would draw like the line for Nick Chubb is probably Rashad White-ish, or maybe James Cook-ish.
I would take. I mean, you're saying that he should be taken like running back like 15.
I think top 15's fair. I think top 15's fair.
A 29-year-old running back coming off a major knee injury. He's on a good team. I don't think the running backs, and I hate to say this, I don't think the running backs behind him are that good.
I could see him passing Pollard, Swift, Mostert, White, Stevenson.
Saying, man.
But I don't know if I would go as far as 14 or 15. I could see like 20 or 21 or something like that.
I'll take that. I'll take that. That's at least like
that counts. I mean, I would take him above where his ADP is.
Where he's getting picked right now is like mid-tier backup, which I think is really disrespectful.
I could see it. I mean, is he on pace to start week 1? Do you know this? Is he like as OTAs
if he's not a guarantee to start week 1, I am so out. It is unbelievable. I'm serious. Like, that's just asking for a disaster, man. He's going to work his way back during the season. At that point, I mean, yes, I would rather take Jonathan Brooks. I would. Who's coming off an injury of his own, but it's a lot more minor.
There's really not a lot of information about it, which makes me think it's not going to be the greatest news. But
at this point, I feel like it's a little bit too blurry to understand. If he is a lock to start week 1, then I don't hate the play. If he is not a lock to start week 1, I have to assume that it's going to be slow working back. And he isn't.
I don't know if he'll be back week 1. It says if all goes as planned, he'll test the twice reconstructed left knee during training camp and work towards a return to the field as soon as possible. So it just seems like we'll see where he is during training camp. And it could be, the news probably won't be like, oh, he's perfect for training camp. It'll probably be, something more mundane than that. But still, I mean, he's so good. He's such a monster. Just whatever Travis Kelce took before the playoffs,
Give it to Nick Chubb, man.
Give it to Nick Chubb. Get him on that.
Maybe the play there is like, if you don't think Chubb's going to be okay, go get Ford. But who knows?
There we go. I don't want Nick Chubb. I want Jerome Ford.
Give me the Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford stack.
Well, Ford is running back 40 right now, and he finished a lot higher than you might think.
He finished at like 16 last year. Is that right?
He finished pretty high.
Not too bad.
You're right.
He had a couple really good games. Ford wasn't terrible last year, but he's not Nick Chubb. And
I actually, if I'm being like completely honest about Jerome Ford, he is not very good.
Oh no,
he's not Nick Chubb.
He spends an awful lot of time in the backfield behind a good offensive line. I think it's interesting. I think it does not make. He has a lot of negative plays, it feels like. And I wonder if it's always on the O-line. But I'm not going to hate on my guy too much. 200 yards in the AAC championship game versus Houston.
Matt, who is your first sleeper?
Raheem Mostert.
There we go.
He was my second one.
Yeah, I mean, sitting here at running back, like 25, 24, mid-20s, when he was running back 2 last season. Now, here's the thing about him. I think people are expecting Achane to come back and to be like the guy. I don't know if I necessarily entirely buy that. Or they're expecting, and his name is slipping me right now, the running back from Tennessee. He was my running back 1.
Yeah,
they're expecting they're expecting like it to be more of a split carry thing, and they're also expecting Mostert had 18 touchdowns last year. He's not going to get back to that number. But 25 is like overpriced in those factors. I don't disagree with them, but I think the carries are going to get split up regardless, like they were last year. I think Achane is still an injury risk. And I know that Mostert is old, but that's kind of the same thing that we were saying last year. And he didn't show a ton of signs of slowing down. He's in a high-powered offense. I know there was a lot of touchdowns that he got last year, and he's not going to repeat the 18 number most likely. But I think people are seeing that and saying, well, that's going to balance out, when in reality, he just plays in an offense that is also going to get him a lot of touchdowns. Like, maybe he doesn't get to 18, but is he going to get to 10? I think I absolutely could see that, no question. So in my opinion, I want to invest in that Miami backfield. I look at Achane, who's running back 9 right now, and I look at Mostert, who's running back 25. And while I don't disagree that Achane, like straight up 1-for-1, is the better play, I'd rather have Mostert at 25, and I'd rather have Jaylen Wright, who's like running back 40-something.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Mostert. I really don't know if I agree or disagree. I mean, he was running back 2 last year. I didn't quite realize that.
Yeah, I'll say this about Mostert. Even in the games where Achane was healthy and playing well, Mostert also played very well in pretty much all of those games.
Right. I mean, and keep in mind, he finished running back 2. He missed a couple of games. Like, he is a really, really productive player and a really productive offense for running backs. Yep. I just don't disagree necessarily. Like, yes, he's older. Yes, he's going to be in a split backfield, but that has been so priced in at this point at 25, or I'm seeing that some places like ADP, like 30.
Yeah.
I just can't get behind that at all. I think that offense is so good. I still think he's going to get a decent number of touches. And I believe that the touchdowns are going to balance out some, but I don't think they're going to go down to like 4. I think he'll still score plenty. So I'm a fan of him. And honestly, I really like Jaylen Wright late too. I think that guy's a beast. And I think if you take both of those guys, you can feel pretty safe that Achane's not going to go out and get 250 touches and you're going to have somebody who's getting the ball. Or you can just kind of bank on, maybe all those guys don't play the entire season, which Achane is smaller, Mostert's older. Kind of feels like that's a decent possibility.
Matt, can I ask you, do you also have Achane as a bust? I don't want to get too far into the episode.
I don't think he's necessarily going to be straight up bad. Now, I believe in him as a player.
Yeah.
But again,
as a top 10 fantasy running back,
as a top 10 fantasy running back, that makes me very nervous for somebody who, I have to agree, he is injury prone. and I think they're going to have to limit the number of touches that he gets. And again, maybe part of it is not necessarily that him at 9 is that bad. It's that Mostert is at 25. So it's like, I don't know. If you want to have the Miami backfield, there's better ways to do it than that. But I also kind of think that when he's playing, he's probably going to go off. Maybe not quite to the level that he did
might
last
be the
year.
strategy. That might be the strategy, though. Just pick
drafting
all
a bunch
them.
of Miami players and betting on their offense, which is good and scores a lot of points. Probably not bad.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been my philosophy for running backs in general, is like just try to find the best rushing offenses.
Absolutely. I clicked the wrong button. It almost brings me to another one of my sleepers, but I want to let you go first, Theo.
Yeah, I'll go with mine. Are kind of boring because I'm kind of running back the same sleepers as last year.
There's nothing wrong with that. Mostert was the big sleeper last year, and I have him like he was the guy maybe as a sleeper, and I'm running him back. So
I might run back Montgomery again, honestly.
And that's my third sleeper. I could not agree more. And keep in mind, we do not come up with these lists together at all.
No.
And none of us have tweeted or posted about it, so it's completely blind.
He was like an honorable mention with sleeper for me, but I agree with you.
It's just that, I mean, what has changed? Like, the offensive line is still good. The running game is still going to be elite. He's still going to be the dude to score a lot of touchdowns. I mean, he's a really good running back. You can't discount how good he is as a blocker. I think you want to keep that 1-2 punch going pretty evenly. Like, you've got both of them on your team. Even though you spent a first-round pick on Gibbs, I don't think you have to force feed him to justify that at some point in his career. It wasn't like, oh, we'll keep Monty going while Gibbs gets attuned to the league, and then we'll phase out Monty. I just don't think that that's going to be their mentality. I think they're still going to want him plenty involved. He's good.
No, and fantasy people just have this idea that that's what the Lions do. And no matter how many times the Lions say, that's not what we do, we like multiple guys, they just don't believe it. They look at, well, in general, when somebody spends this much capital on somebody, they're going to get the ball all the time. Well, guess what, dude? The Lions don't do that, man. They like Montgomery too, who is a very good running back and a very good rushing offense. Now, is Gibbs going to see an uptick in work? Yeah, could be. I think so. And is Gibbs a bad fantasy play? I don't think so, because he's super explosive, and he's also in a good rushing offense, and he can catch the ball a ton, and I think he's prone for a good year. But Montgomery at 24 it just feels the same thing with the Williams Swift stuff. Now, granted, I think both of these guys are better than those two. I think this is a better duo. I think Gibbs is a lot better than Swift.
Yeah.
So I think it's maybe more justified, and certainly there was more capital invested in Gibbs. But I can't get around the fact that the Lions have done nothing but show you Gibbs, or not Gibbs, but they've done nothing but show you that they're going to use multiple backs.
Yeah, it's not as good of a play as it was last year. Like, last year, Monty was my favorite sleeper. Like, it just seems so clear to me. This year, running it back, it's not going to be quite as potent, because I do think that Gibbs is going to start more games. Probably he's going to get more carries. Like, I do think that Gibbs is going to outperform Monty next year, whereas last year they pretty much scored the same. But I don't think it's going to completely flip on its head or anything like that. And I could still see Monty scoring double-digit touchdowns. I mean, he's so good on the goal line. They paid him for a reason. I think they're going to want to keep him involved plenty. And with the receiving core in Detroit being a bit of an unknown, it's obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then we'll see if Jameson Williams can break out. Like, I think they're going to really lean on their running game a ton. It's not a very shocking thing. Like, Detroit's going to lean on their running game, but there's going to be more than enough touchdowns to go around for both of these guys. I think that Detroit's probably going to score over 20 rushing touchdowns next year. So I think they both could get to double digits again, because that's what happened last year, and that's just on the ground. So I like drafting Monty again. I like maybe doing that. So that was my first guy.
I agree.
Yeah.
Blaiden?
I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm picking another Steelers player. Can you believe the NBA Finals are finally here? I've been looking forward to this all year. There's nothing like the excitement of the finals. The best teams battling it out, the energy of the crowd, and imagine being there in person. Well, let me tell you, Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. With Game Time, prices actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They offer killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and of course, their lowest price guarantee, which means Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. I've been browsing through the Game Time app, checking out upcoming NBA Finals games and a few other high-profile events. There are some amazing deals for these games, and my favorite feature is definitely the last-minute tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it. Plus, the flash deals and zone deals make it even easier to snag the best prices. I also appreciate the all-in pricing feature. Just toggle it on to see the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And with their lowest price guarantee, you can feel confident you're getting the best deal, or they'll credit you 110% the difference. Seriously, I think you'll love Game Time as much as I do. It's not just for NBA games either. You can find MLB tickets and tickets of every kind of event in your area. The app's customer service is top-notch, offering event cancellation protection and job loss protection. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code BLADENK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code BLADENK for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. When it comes to your feet, eBay's got your back, because with eBay's authenticity guarantee, real experts are checking your sneakers, every stitch down to the sole. Me personally, I'm a big fan of a classic Air Force, or maybe a nice suede or leather boot, but whatever it is that you're adding to the lineup next, head to eBay. From the drop to your doorstep, eBay does not play with your sneaker game. Just look for that blue check mark. So ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. Jaylen Warren last year finished higher than Najee Harris in PPR, and yet he is like 10 spots lower right now in projected finishing for fantasy this year. Feels a little unfair in my honest opinion. But
yeah, I can see that with Warren. I thought about putting him. I'm a little worried that
he's a little higher. He's a little higher in PPR scoring, but he's still lower than Najee, and he finished higher than him last year with less touches.
Yeah, I guess I worry about what his ceiling is, because Najee is going to get a good number of touches no matter what.
Yeah.
Maybe if they really start to favor Warren a ton, but I kind of don't think that they're going to just phase out Najee entirely, even though they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. And maybe there's some idea that, hey, we might not have Najee back next year, so we're going to run him a lot. Especially since Najee honestly started to play a little bit better towards the end of last year. Like he's not bad, or he's not as limited as he once was, I'll say. So,
but I would also like to see, if I'm the Steelers and I'm saying I don't have Najee next year, I want to see what Jaylen Warren can do as a lead back.
Possibly. And they like to run. They like to run a lot, and they're going to continue to like to run a lot. And Fields possibly starting would be really good for their rushing offense. Warren falls in that category of guys who I really like at their ADP. Whether or not they're a sleeper is maybe a little bit different, but it's one of those guys where I feel like he's going to end up on my team a lot.
Yeah, I like Warren. He's one of my guys as well in the sleeper category, actually. It just with the Arthur Smith offensive coordinator, you never know. Same thing with Pickens. It's like it could be extremely frustrating, but I think
if anything, Najee's the guy that would be losing out, because if he likes to go away from like the the RB1.
But everyone might think
wide
Warren
receiver
should be the
one.
RB1.
Maybe.
Like, would he do the frustrating thing and like start Najee over and over again, even though Warren is like the more electric back? I don't know. That's kind of what happened last year, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know exactly know how the workload will shake out, but to have Najee 12 spots ahead of Warren and to have Warren below, like, I'm looking at Fantasy Pros right now. He's below Devin Singletary and Zach Moss and Javonte Williams and Brian Robinson Jr. Like, I'm taking him above all of those guys easily. I might take him above Nick Chubb. Sorry, Blaiden. I might take him above Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift.
I might agree with you there. I'm like Warren. I would be okay taking above Nick Chubb. Like if someone was like, I would rather have Warren, I would be okay with that.
I mean, like let's talk about what he has going for him. He's with the most run-heavy offensive coordinator in the league. So even if the splits are kind of wonky, they should both get a lot of volume. He was one of the most efficient backs in the league last year. And the same line he was running behind last year just added Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier.
And they added a rushing quarterback that hopefully will open up more for him. And he only had 4 touchdowns last year, and he's getting drafted below his finish last year.
Yep.
That's pretty strong.
Yeah, that's my thought. I think he's a pretty easy sleeper where I can't really see him finishing below where, like, there's no chance he falls short if you draft him where he's being taken right now. Like, all there is to me is upside.
Yeah.
Like, even if Najee is healthy every single game and gets a lot of carries, like, I still think Warren is going to.
Warren's more active in the receiving game too.
Absolutely, he had like 60 catches last year or whatever.
Yep. And
maybe you're
Russ,
worried a little bit.
If Russ checked it down more than anybody else last year, and maybe that was like strict orders from Sean Payton and it won't translate, but it's still worth noting that he really peppered the running backs with targets last year.
Yeah, so I think you're set up well quarterback-wise either way. The offense probably still will not overall be great.
No, probably not.
Probably not. So maybe that 4 touchdown number isn't necessarily going to rise, but you should feel good knowing that he didn't have like a ton of touchdown luck that got him his finish last year is sort of my thought on it. Warren, I just think the reason why Warren is not one of my top sleepers is where I look at Mostert and I think his upside is like really high. Like, I really wouldn't be shocked if he finishes a top 10 running back. Warren, unless Najee gets hurt, he's not going to finish top 10 most likely, right?
Probably not, but I think he would be a solid value. He would be a solid RB2 or flex for me, I feel like.
Very much so.
But hey, that's just me. Matt, who else do you have for us?
I have Gus Edwards, who is running back 40 right now. One thing that really touches pilled me, but I don't know if that quite fits together. Dude, Rachaad White finished like running back like 7 or something last year. And that offense was like not crazy good. And that run game, like his offensive line was like terrible. I mean, it was the run game was like the worst in the NFL by kind of a good margin, if I remember correctly. But it didn't matter because they were giving him the ball a lot. And when you look at the Chargers, we know they're going to run a lot, but their highest drafted back is getting drafted as running back 38, right? Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for that, I'm guessing, is that everybody knows they're going to run, but we don't think the offense is going to be that great, which fair enough. And I don't think it's going to be good as maybe Tampa Bay's was last year. I don't know how that comparison would work out. They do have Herbert, but the receivers are so rough. Is the passing game going to be there? And are they going to grind it out? Yada, 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 right? The other reason is probably because people are worried they don't know who's going to win out there. Like, there's no clear running back 1. And that's true. But even then, I feel like Edwards seems to me like the most established guy of the 3. And you're only having to pick, you're only having to spend like a clear backup spot on him when it very well could be that he ends up with 200 plus carries. J.K. Dobbins, like, you guys know how we feel about J.K. Dobbins if you've ever listened to a single episode of Stay Hot. That is my guy. He was so good for Ohio State. He was so good for the Ravens. He has had a ridiculous amount of major injuries.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that him getting signed there is largely like a Roman Wilson. Not Roman Wilson.
Greg Roman.
Greg Roman, yes.
Yeah.
Keep mixing those two up. Greg Roman, like he was with me on the Ravens, and I really liked him signing.
Yeah. Whereas Gus Edwards
is totally different. Well, Gus Edwards is totally different in the sense that he is not horribly injured, several times. I mean, Dobbins had like 8 carries last year. In the last 2 years, he's had like 50 something. And this is a guy who, the team went and spent a lot of capital on. And I feel bad saying this because I think Dobbins would have been so good if he had stayed healthy. He was so good, but I think he's clearly lost a step. I'm not that scared of him taking a ton of touches. And even if he does, I think this team's going to run a lot. I think they invested in an offensive line. I think the running game could be pretty good. And again, it's just such a small bet for what I feel like could be a pretty major win. I'd be down to do it. I like that.
I feel like also it's a little bit of Theo's mentality with you're either happy or you're right. So either Dobbins is good and you get to be like, Dobbins is good.
Yeah, if Dobbins runs for 1,200 yards, I'll take it, man. But I just can't do it with the Buckeye guys anymore who keep getting hurt. It's brutal, dude. It sucks. So, I mean, if you're in a really deep league, I honestly would consider like a really deep league. I consider just taking like all the Chargers backs, or just take like a couple of them, and it's like, dude, they're gonna run the ball. We know this. We know it, and
just
they're so cheap. It's like everybody else is like running back 60, or just like really be ready on that waiver for the Chargers back if things start to play out like, okay, it's going to be somebody else. But have Edwards, who's like the one guy you 100% need to draft. That would be
your
my
running
thought.
backs should be the Dolphins and the Chargers, and that's it.
I want Kimani Vidal out of Troy, the rookie.
He genuinely has some hype. I feel like we watched him and we liked him okay, didn't we? We watched some of his Senior Bowl stuff.
Did we?
Did we? I don't remember. Well, I actually don't. I mean, after the draft, I watched his highlights and they were good. So, and he also reminded me of Corum a little bit. I'm like, okay, Harbaugh got his 5'8" bowling ball. He's gonna score 18 touchdowns.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna draft Corum,
But Edwards, I guess, had a ton of touchdowns last year. So it's tough to say who will win out. I'm definitely intrigued by all 3 of them to the point where it's like it's tough to list any of them as sleepers, I feel like. Because I don't know which one will kind of be the right answer. Maybe all of them will be the right answer. Maybe none of them will be the right answer. I really don't know what to make of it. I think it's almost like Dontavion Wicks, that we talked about in the last episode, like the Packers receiving core. It's like, if they're all kind of equal, maybe just give me the guy who's getting taken last because he has the same upside, I feel like, as Gus Edwards, but it's just the least amount of resources that it takes to pick the rookie. So of everybody in the Chargers backfield, I think I might be the most interested in taking Vidal super late, but I also feel like he has a lot, there's a lot of people who feel the same way.
Vidal is running back 60,
Yeah.
I think he's not even going to get drafted in a lot of leagues, to be completely honest.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'm too Twitter pilled and the average fantasy league with your friends.
Yeah, maybe look, again, we're talking in May and we see these guys get hyped. I think that Edwards was brought in to be the guy. That's just my gut feeling on that. And I think that he's the most talented. And again, I really think the way that you play this in a regular league where you're not quite getting the running back 60 being drafted, pick Edwards. You're probably good on Dobbins. Maybe Dobbins gets on a team, maybe not. And then just be ready to spend all your waiver wire money week 1 on Vidal if it all of a sudden it turns out that he's the guy. And you could have pretty safely, for cheap, the running back room of a team that really wants to run the ball a lot and loves to use a running back at the goal line when they get down there. I think is going to with
Herbert likes to throw it to running backs as well.
And Herbert
they don't have anybody else.
More than ever.
He's going to need to.
Dude.
Yeah.
Dude, I really, really, really think you could see a lot of Edwards' work. And again, it's running back 38. It's such a low bet. Lower bet than anybody we've talked about so far. So I'm a fan.
Yeah, even lower than Nicholas.
Even lower than Nick. Are we through everybody? I've already said all three of my sleepers. Montgomery, Edwards, Mostert. Where are you guys at?
I have to talk about James Conner, who is another like perpetual underrated guy. But I really think that even though they brought in Trey Benson, I still think it's going to be James Conner's backfield. Like, I just can't imagine it being week 1 and like Benson is out there and Conner is on the bench. And even if it is like Benson gets more work over the course of the season, I like we talked about Marv last week and how we think that Arizona's offense is actually going to be like pretty good. They were a top 10 rushing offense last year without Kyler for half of the season. Now they have Kyler. Their receiving game will be better, which will help the entire offense. And where did Conner finish last year? I've got the numbers up, so I'll tell you in a second. He finished as running back 15 overall, and he was hurt for some of that. He finished running back 7 in fantasy points per game. He only played 13 games, though. So we're talking about the running back 7 in points per game. His situation has changed because they did draft a running back high. But for him to drop down to running back 20 on Fantasy Pros right now, I just think that people are overestimating the impact that Benson is going to have, or they're just underrating Conner and they think he's boring. Like,
it's possible. I wonder if the Cardinals drafting a running back was more preemptive, just because Connor's going to be a free agent next year.
Yeah, I think that could totally be like, this isn't a instant dividends type of thing. Because I think James Conner played at like, maybe not an all-pro level because of, how good McCaffrey was. But, I mean, outside of McCaffrey, like, James Conner played just about as... Yeah, Kyren. But it's like James Conner and Kyren, to me, are pretty similar in terms of their caliber and in terms of their style as well. Like, I definitely think that Conner is being slept on right now because he's just never a sexy pick. Like, oh, it's James Conner. But that dude has top 10 upside, and he's getting taken at 20 right now, I think. So he's one of my favorites, and I think that he's being slept on in an offense that should be good running the ball. Could be good overall, honestly. And he had the results last year, so.
I have mixed feelings about that. Conner was really good last year, and he is a very good back just straight up. He's also 29. We're starting to get up there age-wise. And a lot of his super high fantasy success comes off the fact that in 13 games, he had like 210 rushes. And you put that to 17 and you start to get up like 260 or 270 or something really high. And it feels like for a team that drafted a guy at 66 overall and Benson, who I think is pretty good. I think Benson's a pretty solid back. Maybe I'd be worried that it's going to cut into that a little bit. But I can see the vision there that maybe people are overreacting a little bit and that Connor's still really good. So I don't hate that. And I do think the Cardinals offense is going to be better. So he's another guy where I think I really like him at his ADP, but I wouldn't quite go to sleeper territory.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who I would take him over. I think I'd take him over Alvin Kamara, who's one spot ahead of him. I think I might take him over. Man, then it gets tough. So maybe I like him. Maybe I like him at his ADP as well. I might like him more than Montgomery, who I talked about earlier. I think like those two are kind of similar backs, but James Conner outperformed Montgomery. Yeah, and he doesn't have Gibbs to contend with. So even though I like Montgomery, I do think I like Conner even a little bit more as a sleeper, considering he's lower. So I like him ahead of at least the 3 guys directly in front of him. And now that I'm looking at it, it's like, I don't know if I actually like Montgomery as a sleeper. Because I'm like, could I move him up at all from 17 above Cook and Mixon and Rashad White? It's
Depends on what format you're playing with Montgomery, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll say this about Kamara. I don't think Kamara is nearly as good as he once was. Like, I think he's fallen off a pretty considerable amount.
Kamara's interesting. I was thinking of him as, I don't mean to interrupt you, Matt, but I was thinking of him as a
crazy.
bust. And then I was like, well, last year he was RB11 in PPR,
Yeah,
but in standard, he was not nearly that high. If you are, so this is the take with Kamara. If you are in a PPR league, yes, absolutely. He's going to get the ball in the receiving game. But if you are in a standard league, Kamara is not on the table. Like, Kamara would be a very hard sell for me.
I think that's actually pretty fair. Kamara was really inefficient last year. The Saints offense, I don't like it. And actually, right now I'm looking at their ADP, like between standard and PPR. I figured it's like, okay, well, he's going to just be like way lower in standard, but not really. 17 versus 16.
Yeah.
The problem is that like the Saints don't have anybody proven behind him, and they're paying him so much, and he's so established that they throw him out there all the time. In 13 games, he had 86 targets, which is totally insane. And in PPR, he's just going to completely clean up in that sense. I think it's going to be very similar to last year, and I can't really hate on him as running back 16. Although, I guess I'm a little worried about the injury stuff, and he's older, and you never know. But,
Sure.
Again, with the Rashad White stuff, it's just about getting the ball a ton. I think Kamara just catching the ball a ton and not being efficient with it, and the Saints offense being bad and that being worth a ton of points says a lot about the PPR format, to be completely honest with you.
Interesting.
But yeah, I can't quite get on the Kamara bust train because I totally see the vision. He's going to get the ball.
Can I ask, what is your guys' favorite scoring format?
Half. And I like tight end premium.
What is tight end premium again? Do you get?
It's either 1 if you're in half PPR or 1.5 if you're in full PPR for receptions.
Yeah, I agree. I like
really
half.
valuable.
Honestly, I do like standard a good bit. Like, I really don't think that getting a reception entitles you to points if it doesn't go anywhere. But like, there's just so many people use PPR that I can settle for half PPR because standard does seem to be getting
really bothers me. It really bothers me, man. And although I think the 32-team league might be full PPR, but that's because we need as many points as we can get. Like, having somebody on your team who actually catches the ball, like,
that is a completely different scenario. So it's like when Theo did what was the one league where you had if you got a pick six, it was an instant win.
It was like the golden snitch in Harry Potter when I did. You got like 6 corners and a pick six was worth like 10,000 points. That whole league was messed up because I had -1. It was PPR inverse where like a catch would be minus a point, but you could make up for it with the yards. So it's like if you got inefficient catches, you'd be losing points, and like and if you got a carry, it was minus a point. So the only way to get points was to actually be efficient with your carries. That's the same league.
I like that. I think that's funny as a gimmick. Oh, I also feel very strongly that I think absolutely every league should be super flex 2 quarterbacks. Quarterback is the most important position in regular football, and it is the least important position in fantasy. It does not make any sense. You need to have 2 quarterbacks in your leagues so they matter more. I feel strongly about that.
I can see that. I mean, there's only like 10 to 12 people playing in like your average fantasy league, if that. So every quarterback, you can wait until the last round and get a top 10 quarterback.
Right. If the strategy is just like no matter what, you should be waiting on quarterback. Probably that sucks, dude. Like that's not fun. I think that's why I like tight end premium as well. Like there should be real value in taking one of the top tight ends high. It should be a real balance between things. So I'm a super flex tight end premium half point PPR guy. And
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you though. I don't necessarily like live and die by those. I'm not in the kinds of fantasy leagues.
In a dynasty league, I think it absolutely must be super flex. In a regular league, it's kind of whatever. But I like dynasty leagues that feel like, okay, it's kind of realistic where like if Caleb Williams is entering the draft now, it's like you're really getting Caleb Williams rather than he's going to go with, like pick 6 because he's just a quarterback and who really cares,
Mm-hmm.
It almost, and a lot of the other rookies, it's like Drake May. It's like, where do you take a guy who might not even be a good quarterback, and he needs to be a top 12
Yeah.
quarterback to even be playable as a starter? Probably not high at all.
Right.
Anyway,
Anywho.
who are y'all's busts?
I don't really love Ekeler. I think, honestly, I look at the overall ADP, and there's nobody where I'm like particularly mad at them. You know?
I found this a little bit difficult as well.
With Ekeler at 26, I just don't think Ekeler is very good at all. And I think you're entirely gambling on his situation. But his situation is like a total unknown outside of the fact that Washington signed him for like $4 million a year. You're betting on that over like Zach Moss, who I feel like is pretty clear the running back one, or Jonathan Brooks, who I think is pretty clear the running back one, or like Warren he's going over. I'd much rather have Warren, or I'm seeing Mostert. This isn't standard scoring I'm glancing at right now. I think I'd take all of those guys over Ekeler. And I know that he's been fantasy relevant for a long time because they give him a ton of targets. But Daniels is, not a guy who's going to check it down as much because of his rushing ability and because he likes to hold on to the ball for a long time. Yeah. And again, you're banking on Ekeler being out there all the time and getting, 100 targets. Like, that's the high end. I guess at running back 6, you maybe don't need him to get that many touches. And I guess in like PPR or whatever, he could probably make up for it. They probably will show him the ball a ton. But I don't know. There's just other guys. I'd like to invest in young talent rather than old guys where you're kind of gambling entirely on a situation.
Yeah, and they're probably going to be one of the worst offenses in the league as well. I mean, their offensive line isn't that much more inspiring than it was last year. I know they addressed it somewhat, but like not in any kind of major way. I kind of like Chris Rodriguez. He was someone that was one of my sleepers in the video I outlined last year. And he got a little bit of run last year with everything going on in Washington. And it wasn't too bad, actually. He's a tough runner between the tackles. I think that, like, if you're a bad team, like, I might want to give him some run. I don't know. I'm pretty neutral on Ekeler, to be honest with you, but I don't hate what you're saying.
I'm noticing something right now. Ekeler is ranked higher in standard than he is in PPR.
I think that makes no sense at all. That might just be May nonsense, though. I'm willing to accept that could possibly
He's 26th in standard, and he's 32nd in PPR.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's
totally
I'm
not
bonkers.
I'm not the biggest fan of that entirely. Outside of that, though, I feel like as it stands, we don't know how a lot of these running back rooms are going to totally shake out. There's some guys where I just don't think DeAndre Swift at 21. I don't want to run back the same ones, but I don't really love that because I think that's kind of assuming that he's going to totally take over. How much did they pay him? Did they give him a big long deal or was it a short one? Because that does matter in terms of what you're expecting. I just don't think Swift is like super, super talented. And I wonder if they've invested enough for me to say like, okay, yeah. Like, okay, he was running back 17 last year for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's on the Bears, who I'm not saying necessarily are going to have a bad rushing offense. It was a 3-year, $24 million deal, though. That's pretty serious. There's just other guys I like more. I feel like the upside with Swift doesn't feel super, super high. Like 21's not crazy, but I'll take some other dudes. So he might be another guy I don't love at his ADP, but maybe isn't a point blank bust. Javonte Williams is another guy we brought up. Pollard is another guy where it's like, I see it. I don't like, he's going as running back like 28 or whatever in standard, at least maybe a little bit higher in PPR. It's another guy like I don't love.
Pollard's a guy I thought about, but I'm like, I don't really know how to feel about that.
But they gave him like a 3-year deal. There's a lot of these guys out here who got these like 3-year, $21 million, 3-year, $24 million. They were giving out running back contracts like that all off season. And I don't think any of them are just like not going to get the ball at all, which is essentially what it would take for them not to be top 30 running backs where they're getting taken.
Yeah.
But they're just not my favorite plays, you know?
I got one that's kind of a big name. I agree. Like I got into the like 20s and the 30s. I'm like, I don't know about any of this. So I went up to the top 10 to figure out like who's someone that I think could kind of, you take them super high and then they just don't give you much. Like those to me are like the biggest busts.
Yeah.
And I see Breece Hall at running back 2. And I'm like, I don't know if I would stomach that. Like the second overall pick in the draft. Are you taking Breece Hall?
He finished his RB2 last year, didn't he?
Did he?
I thought I see him at RB6, me personally. Yeah. That could be in standard though.
In PPR he was 2. In standard he was 7. In half PPR he was 4.
I'm still not convinced on him. I'm still not convinced. He played 17 games last year as well, which very, very few people do. So again, like on the I like the per game metrics because it kind of cancels all that out. And on the website I'm looking at, he was 12th in fantasy points per game last year. And now he's number 2. And I just feel like going back to my mentality where it's like you want the running backs on the best rushing offenses. Like those are typically the dudes who finish very highly. Like last year, Christian McCaffrey, San Francisco, great rushing offense. Sean McVay and the Rams were a great rushing offense last year. Kyren Williams. Miami was a great rushing offense last year. They had 2 guys who were elite, Raheem Mostert and Achane. Detroit with David Montgomery, right? Arizona was a top 10 rushing offense for EPA. James Conner, that's number 7. Like, it's a lot of good, like really good rushing offenses in the top 10. And I feel like that's kind of what you're looking more for than necessarily just like a top talented runner, like a Saquon or a like on the Giants or a Breece on the Jets. That's kind of what concerns me is like, where are the Jets going to finish in rushing next year?
And I guess, they probably had to lean on Breece more with the quarterback situation being as bad as it was last year.
Especially in the receiving game. Like he received so many screens and checkdowns that get you these points in PPR just because it's their only way to get off. Like, let's just dump it to Breece. And that's like automatic points for you. This year, I'm not sure that it's going to be quite the same, but it could be canceled out by like, oh, Rodgers is going to play and
it's kind of a mystery how much Rodgers is going to throw to him. It doesn't feel like it's going to be more than last year when you basically just didn't have real quarterbacks for the entire year. So, of course, he's going to see 100 targets. Yeah. But I also kind of believe in Hall as, a receiving threat. Like, he is going to see the ball a decent amount, and he's going to be on the field a decent amount. The other thing that's a question mark is his second year off the knee injury. Does he take even a bigger step? Because he was coming off a pretty big injury, and him maybe not being quite as great as he was when he came into the league, or not quite as like physically 100% as he was. Maybe that gets even better and he runs even better. I definitely see the nerves with Hall and him finishing as running back 12 because he played 17 games and that gets him to running back 2. I think that's kind of valid. And I do think like I like a Bijan better, who I think has real like running back 1 upside, where the Falcons just say like, oh, we're just going to spam him a ton because Algier didn't really play all that good last season or whatever.
Yeah.
And he definitely would be not my favorite pick, but I'm just not quite low on him enough because I think he's very talented and I think he will see the ball a lot. So I can't, but I see your vision,
Yeah, it's just there's some guys below him that I think could be involved with really, really good rushing offenses, like Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis. Yeah. I think that could be a really Taylor top might be a tier
sleeper too.
He's an RB4, so it's like I don't know how much higher I could have him go because it basically is like, is he RB4 or is he RB2? Because Christian McCaffrey is going to be RB1, right? So it's like I like him where he's at, but like would I like him more than Breece? I might because I think the Indianapolis rushing attack is going to be a lot better than the Jets rushing attack. Same thing with Saquon in Philly and even like Gibbs in Detroit. It's like I just think that they're going to. I just like they're involved with the better rushing attacks, and that's really all it is. It's like, do I want Breece in like kind of just the situation is still kind of mid in New York, and again, like if Rodgers gets hurt again, then Breece is gonna have more. Like, is it just gonna be more like Breece 40 yards on the ground, 40 yards through the air? Like, I don't know. There were just a lot of games like that last year, I felt like. And
I want to ask your guys' thoughts on 2 players. The first is Derrick Henry.
He was another one on my bust.
Bust, really?
Yeah. He was. I love Derrick Henry too. I've been saying that like, oh, he's not as washed as you think. And I think that's still true. But I mean, when I look at how Baltimore split up all their rushing attempts last year, there's just no way Derrick Henry comes within 100 carries of where he was at on the Titans. I feel like I just, with Lamar there and Keaton Mitchell maybe coming back, and after his, we'll see about how he recovers from the ACL, but like he looked really effective last year, and now you kind of know that. Like, would you want to work him in a little bit more? Henry's on a new team that doesn't need him to carry the ball this much. Like, I just think that he's gonna go down such a huge amount in terms of his workload, which I think is good for like from a football standpoint, but from a fantasy standpoint, I'm like, what is his receiving upside? Like, how many carries is he gonna get? So I don't know. I don't know if he's top 10.
If you were the Ravens, your strategy with Derrick Henry would very, very easily be, we're saving him for the playoffs.
Yeah.
We're not gonna give him the ball 300 times. If you're the Titans, you're sitting there and saying, well, we suck. And we're going to run it with him all the time, man. Because what else are we going to do? Because it's Derrick Henry.
Right.
I think that Henry will be more efficient than he was last year. I don't think there's a question about that. He's going to be with Lamar, and their rushing offense is going to be so good. And I think he's probably going to have some really big games. At running back 10, considering that he had 280 rushes last year and finished as like running back 8, I don't know. And that the receiving opportunity for him, I think, is going to be even less than it was last year because Lamar doesn't check it down a ton, and Henry's not even really like the biggest pass catcher ever. Although he did some, but even then he didn't get up.
He became like crazy good on screens like recently, where like every screen that they threw him got like 70 yards these last.
But the Ravens just have. There's no way that Derrick Henry is higher than like the 6th receiving option on that team.
It's just not built for a bunch of checkdowns. And maybe Lamar, as he starts to run a little bit less, turns to checking it down a little bit more. But there's definitely some nerves there. I do get it. And I look at like Rachaad White, who's right below, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure Rachaad White's going to get the ball a million times. And I think they invest in the offensive line. I'm like, okay, that could probably only get better. So I might like that.
I actually really like Rachaad White. He catches so many passes. According to Fantasy Pros, he has the easiest schedule next year for a running back. They added Graham Barton, who I love. He started like as a pretty mediocre runner, like pure runner. I do think he's on kind of a positive development track on that area. And you still have all the receiving upside. The only guy behind him is like Bucky Irving, who maybe he'll really cut into the workload. Bucky, but I do think that I'd rather have White than Derrick Henry. I'll say that.
The other guy I want to ask about is Aaron Jones.
I like him. I like him where he's at, though.
Where is he at right now?
He's at 18. He's at 18.
I don't know. I actually
do you know where
don't
he finished last year?
I'm sure he finished decently, but he also had a very bad start to the year and then just got red hot.
Yeah, he was better in the playoffs.
Or you're saying you're very against Aaron Jones, is what you're saying.
I'm a little. I don't know, man. I'm a little against it.
Aaron
Jones,
never
fade,
you think
my
he
boy.
Can't handle? You think he can't handle the big workload? You think he's older? You think he's washed? And you go to Ty Chandler as your big sleeper, who I want to make this clear was obviously the best back on Minnesota last year from the preseason. I remember watching him in preseason, being like, "This guy is better than Madison." And it just took them so long to figure that out. I think their rushing situation is interesting. I think they're going to run the ball a lot with McCarthy, and I think they're going to have a pretty good rushing game. I think their offense is still going to be like, I don't know, pretty decent. Like at least like they're going to be able to bomb it down to some pretty good receivers or whatever. And I could get behind them having a draft. Like I could get behind Jones at 18. The guy that I'm really looking at is Kyren Williams. It's at I think running back 7. I mean, he could have finished way, way high if he had played a full season. And I know he didn't quite like get through the full year, but I think a lot of the reason why he's sort of being devalued is because of the Blake Corum pick. Now, the problem that I have right now.
I'm sorry. What?
Look, the problem that I have right now is that the Blake Corum pick, I can't disparage too much in my Ohio State hat without people thinking that I'm biased. And I will admit that there's some potential for Blake Corum to bounce back because last year was his first year off a major injury. But to be clear, Blake Corum was bad last season for Michigan. He was not an efficient running back. He scored a lot of touchdowns. He got a lot of work, but he was not like particularly quick or did a good job like fighting off tacklers and whatnot. I didn't think that he was that great. I thought that Edwards was a better running back than him, even though Corum got more of the work. So I guess your play there could be if you really believe in Williams, who was good and got a ton of work, and you don't think that Corum's going to bite into his workload because you don't think that Corum is that great. That could be your play. But I forget what they spent on Corum. If it's like a day 2 pick, I'm a little nervous that he's going to get touches no matter what. If it's like a day 3 pick,
I think he was around 3. He was around 3.
I went on that whole spiel for nothing. I just don't think that. I just think that
Corum was also good in the playoffs. Like he was good. He got better. I feel like as the season went on, and maybe that had something to do with the injury.
That's true.
But I still think like Kyren Williams was number 1 in yards per game last year. Like number 1.
They were running him like crazy, and they threw the ball to him as well.
And looking at my trusty points per game metric, he was second. He was second behind McCaffrey. So Kyren was really, really good last year. So more than like being scared of Corum, it's like, can Corum cut into this guy's workload? Because he's just like, you can be a pretty damn good running back and not be as good as Kyren Williams for the Rams last year. That's kind of the way I look at it. Because I don't know, but I also think that Corum was a bit overdrafted in round 3, even though I'm piping up to remind you that he did get better as the year goes on. I still think they overdrafted him. I don't think that he should cut into the workload too much.
I don't know. Maybe Kyren might be appropriately rated there then. I don't know. It's kind of tough. Because do you think he'll be better than Saquon? I don't know.
Maybe. Saquon is...
Shock me.
It wouldn't shock me either. I think Saquon is like geared to have a huge season, but like...
It's weird because it's like...
I don't know.
If you get to the 1, you know what's coming, right? Like Saquon's not getting the ball on the 1 yard line.
I'd be worried that Hurts doesn't check it down a ton, and I'd be worried that Saquon is not going to get the ball on the goal line, and I'd be worried that he's getting older.
Yeah.
He's going to be on a very good rushing offense, so I don't really hate him at his ADP, but like I have real concerns about that stuff. I don't know. I guess of like all the top
concerns
guys,
just about the vibes of the Eagles offense too. Like it was just so bad at the end of last year. I'm like, is Sirianni going to be like out week 7? Like after they start like 3-4 or some shit like that? Is like Saquon joining the team at like a bad time? Like I know Saquon would have gone nuts last year on that team. Like I know it, and I think that he's going to go nuts on this team. Like I really think their offensive line is still going to be good even without Kelsey. But there is like a little bit of unknowns with the.
I feel like the vibes will be fine. I don't know.
You do? You think they'll bounce back?
I think Jalen Hurts will get the guys.
I think it will be mediocre vibes. I think somewhere in between of like a total disaster versus okay vibes. That would be my.
Yeah.
That would be my fantasy.
You think you're so cool taking the middle ground?
Yeah, I think both sides are a little right about the Eagles' vibes next year. But we've talked about just about everybody, it feels like now. And we'll probably do it again, right?
No, Pacheco. We didn't talk about Pacheco.
We didn't talk about Pacheco. He's fine.
He's probably
they didn't draft anybody. Although I'll say that like he's right where his ADP was last year, and I feel like nothing has changed. So
yeah,
I'll probably finish around this.
Yeah, we didn't talk about McCaffrey either. You know,
I think he'll be good.
Yeah,
shout out to him.
You don't think he's a sleeper?
I would take if I had the first overall pick in the draft. That's who I would take.
Yeah, wow. Hot take. I might take Travis Kelce. I don't know.
I think that'd be crazy.
Crazy. I was crazy once. Well, I think that's pretty much it then. Another Stay Hot episode in the books. Been talking about some fantasy. We might keep it going. We might not. But I can tell you what we will be doing is we'll be doing another live stream on Tuesday. If you guys enjoyed the last Madden live stream we did last Tuesday, then you will be in for a treat this week. because we will have refined our process and we will be even more streamlined and more successful on the field. Can't say anything else. It'll be a great time. Make sure you tune in. Be roughly around 6 p.m. Eastern. And until then, and until the next episode, thank you all so much for tuning in. It's been an absolute blast. And we will catch you on the flippity flop.